There we go. Neil, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
All right, we cleaned it up. The echo is gone.
Wonderful.
We were trying something we had never done before. Yeah. It didn't work.
Yeah. This is working.
This is live radio. So Neil, you're doing extraordinary things with both your company and with LEDs, and I particularly wanted to reach out to you and get involved in this because there's not only energy benefits, but there are health benefits that are attached to this, and I thought that making that connection was something that our listeners would be interested in. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of background on kind of how you landed up in Randolph and some of your passion for energy efficiency before the LED company even really got going.
Sure. So I'm a longtime tech guy. Had the good fortune to go to a pretty good set of schools and learn a lot about semiconductors and science. And I've always been very curious about how the world worked, and that led me to rather a scientific education, and then finally an engineering education, which is sort of the application of science. And spent a fair span of time in the fiber optics and communications industries. And then around 2008, I saw that as a, industry that was headed essentially towards a predictable path, maybe not maturity, but a predictable path. But it was more important, I thought, to work on things such as, energy conservation and how we get renewables started in an effective way, and made a lot of personal choices around that idea myself, how I lived and so forth. And that was all very positive. The thing that also happened contemporaneously is I wrapped up work at a company that had been merged into another company, and a couple of friends of mine started yet another one, as tends to be the case, and we were able to make a bit of headway in the LED industry. Eventually, that company is a company called Albio, became part of General Electric, and it continues to be a big part of what they do in terms of general illumination. So that worked out rather well. And then from there, I tried to find similarly interesting kinds of things to work on. And eventually I was asked to take a look at LEDdynamics, which is, as a company, is rather rare. Most lighting companies, they might not have such a deep engineering team as LEDdynamics does. LEDdynamics is rare amongst lighting companies in that regard. It was founded by a gentleman named Bill McGrath, who was a VTC professor. He had a very strong team with him, kind of swept the top of the class year after year to get a talented group of engineers. And then, meanwhile, inventions continued in the LED world. As much as we like to think of LEDs as being done, they really aren't. They're still sitting at modest levels of penetration, and there's still a great deal of room left for the energy efficiency world to make inroads. And it's probably easier to make some of those inroads rather than putting up renewables. In other words, they call it megawatts, right? You pull the watts off the grid rather than adding renewable resources. And that's always been intriguing to me. Meanwhile, we actually invented a technology that rather accurately recreates sunlight inside. And you say, well, why is that so important? We've got windows that lets it come in through the windows into the buildings, but that light doesn't get very far into the building. And a lot of people are actually working under lighting that does not really help them with what's known as their circadian entrainment. And I'll explain a little bit about what that is. Circadian entrainment is your ability to be in sync with the day around you. So if you're here in New England, maybe you should wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to bed at 9 o'clock at night, and your body should be on that schedule. But a lot of us spend 80 or 90% of our time indoors. And out of that, we lose some of our circadian entrainment because the lighting over our heads does not behave like sunlight. It has a very constant appearance. Sunlight actually changes throughout the day. we know this by the sunrise and sunset being quite amber, and then in the middle of the day the light is more blue, and there's physical reasons for that. We have a thing called Rayleigh scattering that has to be accounted for in the atmosphere, and that gives you those beautiful sunrise and sunsets. But it also sets our personal clocks. And relatively recently, our brains were teased. How this happens in our brains was kind of teased apart by essentially two discoveries. The first was understanding that the eye, in addition to rods and cones, has what's known as an intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion. So long name, but basically that sensor sets our clocking. It determines how much melatonin we produce, when we do it during the day. And strangely enough, it's only reactive with blue light. So we didn't quite know all this when LEDs were first invented, but LEDs have a relatively blue-rich behavior intrinsically. And that can be changed, but you have to do some engineering to get that right. So we realized that this might be somewhere we could innovate, and sure enough, we were able to create a technology which we call PERFEKTlight. We spell it with a K rather than a C, a bit of a scientific joke because Kelvin is in K.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got through that, and we were able to very accurately recreate sunlight inside. This has caused a bit of attention from first the elder care community, because the oldest members of our communities typically have more trouble sleeping than the younger people who have higher melatonin and so forth, and actually get outside more too. The elder population is indoors, so we've been able to deploy it in that. We're looking at psychiatric inpatient work with this kind of lighting because it does seem to have a calming effect on people, and we're very excited that this is now something we can offer to the world, basically, as a way of improving interior spaces so that people remain circadian and trained and they get good sleep at night. This, you might say, well, how important is that? Maybe a bad night's sleep, whatever. Well, in 2012, a group in Rochester figured out just how important it was to get deep sleep, and they learned that, frankly, our brains don't clear themselves properly without deep sleep. The rest of your body clears its quote-unquote metabolites, the results of metabolic activity, with the lymphatic system. Your brain doesn't have a lymphatic system. It has something they dubbed the glymphatic system, and that system only really works in deep sleep. So if you don't get all the way through a good deep, 8 hours of sleep or so, you tend to wake up with what many people describe as brain fog, and you feel a little crummy. Maybe you have an extra coffee, something like that. But if this is done day after day, the metabolites build up in the brain, and the Alzheimer's community in particular is thinking that this may be related to why people eventually have Alzheimer's. The other thing that's clinically observed is that those with Alzheimer's, if they sleep poorly, do rather badly in their results. In other words, the declines are faster, the impairment of the individual becomes more dramatic, and so on. Whereas conversely, if a person does sleep well, even if they have Alzheimer's, they don't progress in their disease, which was a very profound observation and has caused a lot of interest, in improving lighting for precisely this reason. If we reduce the blue at the right time of day, people become sleepy at the right time, or they call it somnolent. We see them performing rather well, even in late life scenarios. Again, if they don't do that, we see other results. So we're now working with some elder care groups that have specific expectations for that. The elder community is growing as a part of the population. So these firms that do elder care are growing as alongside, and they're constructing new buildings and renovating new buildings. And this presents a place where LEDdynamics can contribute its know-how to the betterment of a vulnerable population.
So let me stop for a moment and ask a few questions that came up when I watched your presentation in preparation for this show. Is that sleep? Is this REM sleep, or is it just getting a good night's sleep and REM is built into that?
Yeah, exactly. So that REM sleep, or call it the deepest of sleep, is the period of time where your body is doing its most important restorative work on your brain. And it has a lot of ramifications. The first of which is norepinephrine, which is a chemical in your brain, becomes downregulated, meaning that it's not present very much. And what that has, when I read it, I was myself fascinated by this. Basically, your cells in your brain become nominally smaller, and fluid flow is improved. It's cerebral spinal fluid, kind of the same thing that's in your spinal column and in your brain. That the flow rate of that is increased 60-fold during deep sleep and through REM sleep. And that is when you've dreamt, you've done it correctly. You've gotten a full night's sleep and your brain is cleared.
Wow. So that's 60 times. So what we're doing is we're doing the equivalent of what people who are in torture cells get, and that is we get sleep deprivation, and that's the approved or not unapproved, but the adopted methodology to try and break people and make them bend to your will and be unfunctional. So
yes, I would expect that if you kept a person sleep deprived, their ability to think would become less and less day after day. And what we're all taught when we were taking exams in school, well, after a certain point, stop studying, get the good night's sleep, right? Yeah. And I think that's still the right strategy for all of us. Is at some point you just gotta allow yourself to sleep. There's populations though in the country like shift workers, people that really are operating out of circadian entrainment. They have more accidents. They have more difficulties with chronic disease. People who work for airlines and are bouncing around all the time, different time zones, they have more health problems than the average population. So what we see is that by getting this deep sleep, it improves everything. And by not getting it, it makes everything worse, essentially. So we really feel like it's becoming increasingly evident that this is extremely important. Some of the lighting research community has been vocal about this, and in seminars and so on, they say, look, the data is already in. We have to work on this. And unfortunately, the construction industry and the retrofitting of buildings and so on happens rather slowly. There's about 2% turnover in infrastructure per year, meaning that significant renovation or new construction only happens on that small percentage, 1/50th of the building population at any one point in time. There is more work being done in retrofits, like just taking out the lights and putting in new ones, but it is disruptive to the inside of the building, so you have to time it well. Like for schools, it's typically when the students aren't there that these kind of things get done. It can still be done, but it has to be worked into the operation of the buildings. So gracefully.
So you've come up with not only an LED light source that is highly balanced with the light curve or the light we get from daylight, from sun and so forth. But you've also come up with the tuning tools to set that up so it automatically works for the environment that you're in, and I realize that a lot of your work is being done for building construction. Do you see a way of bringing this all the way into people's homes?
We do have some products that will go into homes, and we're working on still more because that's an important part of this. There's there's home care of elders. There's people that are under nursing care. They can't get out very much, and we do see that as an important market. The first target was to build a system that would work over a large area because elder care facilities are typically, they're comprehensive. They have eating, activities, lodging accommodations, and nursing stations, all built under one roof. And this is it might look like a sort of a merger between a medical facility and a hotel, if you will, or a condominium complex. And if you keep people indoors, you want them to move from room to room with the same light over their head. You want them to remain, what we say, stay in good circadian entrainment. And in order for that to work correctly, we had to sync all the lights together. Right. And we had a very clever innovation in that regard, which we came up with controllers. And controllers are just collections of integrated circuits with software. And fortunately, because our team is so deep in things like software, this is a rather straightforward exercise. And so we have a system that encompasses a large area within a building, or even the whole building, all of which acts as one. All of the lights change simultaneously, so you don't go from room to room and experience different lighting, which is, counterproductive for this purpose. So we came out with that. We also were able to eventually hook it to Alexa because, there may be some of the resetting of the controls and everything people want to do verbally. My joke about our own company is, we're a lighting company, but we're really a computer science company. In fact, we're just masquerading as something else. We have a lot of software capability, and even the founder and some of the top people here in the engineering group are excellent software engineers, and they were able to figure this out along with many other types of problems like this. But if you don't do that and you don't make it easy for the installers and easy for the operators, lighting is already something that people think of as being a relatively simplistic part of building operations. So we wanted to fit into that paradigm. We have a set of controls which we call set and forget, which literally means that you set them up and then you just leave them, and they adjust for everything that's needed throughout the day, throughout the year, and you don't have any further need for participation from the staff. And that was actually very well received. If you make it too complicated or make it too hard, or people have to look after it day in and day out, the chances are it's probably not going to operate in the optimal condition all the time. So that was another, thank you for that question, because it's another part of the innovation.
Yeah. So again, thinking about us poor mortals who are not living in one of your magic buildings, any suggestions for things that we should do to improve our melatonin levels? I know Todd and I both don't always sleep all that well overnight. We're getting on in our years.
Yeah. Well, I had a serious case of brain fog, which I still have. And I just, while I'm on here, and I'm interested to hear your answer to this question, Neil, is, in fact, I'm having brain fog right now. Oh, I know. I wanted to say about your company, it seems like you're also a healthcare company.
We are slowly becoming one.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with all the work you're doing in, the elder care institutions, et cetera. And but I'll let Henry continue, and I might have a question about that part a little bit.
So, suggestions of things that we can do?
Yeah. So the very first thing one can do is expose yourself to sunlight outside. If you do that, studies have shown that even a small amount of outdoor activity can really restore a person's circadian entrainment. It's indicated that perhaps the morning is some of the best time to do that. If you can get out for even a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and be outside for that span of time in the morning, you do better with your sleep. There's also, sort of strategies for those days where you can't do that, and you do not want to have the bluest of lights on all day long, and you certainly don't want to have very, very deep and blue intensity lights when you're operating in your own home. Like, let's say you get up in the middle of the night to go find a glass of water or use the restroom or something. You don't want to go out of that somnolent state. Essentially, your melatonin is now coming up, and it should be staying up in its concentration in your blood. But as soon as you turn that blue light on, you will be going backwards. Your body will then start to say, "Oh, it's noontime, and I should be maximally alert." And your eye will start to signal your brain that it's that time of day. So you can utilize lights in your own home, even without a sophisticated control scheme like we have, to manage your daily work. So a lot of people see this as kind of a bulb switching strategy, like they might have a lamp that they use or a part of their house that they use at a particularly warm, we call it a warm color temperature, like that amber light, candle light. Ironically, even though we tried to drum them out of existence because they're so inefficient, but incandescent bulbs are pretty good at this. They don't wake you up. Candles don't wake you up. Fires don't wake you up. What wakes you up is fluorescent lights, bluish lights, LEDs with significant blue peaks, and those you want to avoid at night. You should actually have that kind of lighting. Let's say you have a work from home or work in the office station. You should have blue light then, because you're being, you want to be maximally alert in the middle of the day. And the behavior of sunlight is from about, let's say, 10 in the morning to, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 in the afternoon. The light is pretty intense, pretty blue. And, we can get close to that as an approximate level. Some of the ways that people treat seasonal affective disorder is this exact strategy. They tend to use very, very bright lights at certain points in the day. The other thing that, we can reasonably see here is that, the community of people that suffer from sundowners, they typically are already afflicted with some part of dementia or early onset dementia. And it's the strangeness of the shadows as the sun declines in the atmosphere that sees this phenomena off and makes them confused, disoriented, and so on. So we've worked hard to make the light more uniform in the building. So if you can, in your own home, work on not having the light dark so much, which is a different strategy.
Are the LEDs that are that have a high color rendition have a good is it CPI? I've forgotten what it's, but anyway, color rendition number and a warm white. Do those still have too much blue in them?
Very good question. That answer varies in detail, because it's possible that you could get a light source that does have pretty reasonable color rendering, but still has an undesirably large blue peak. And we've worked hard to utilize systems that don't, and we have a color correction factor in. We add a little bit of extra green in the tuning, and that enables us to get both the high CRI and yet have very little blue light, except when it's warranted in the middle of the day, sort of that 10 a.m. to 2:30 in the afternoon period. And that's sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then coming back to cell phones, I run mine with a nighttime mode that kicks in at 10 o'clock at night. How good is that at protecting you from blue screen light? And is that going to become available in televisions?
Gosh, you would hope so. But it does seem as though Apple has gotten a little bit ahead on that. They have this thing called Night Shift. And you probably remember it from that talk. I actually compared Night Shift to what it should look like in the day. And when I saw that, I actually changed mine to work from 7 o'clock at night onward, because I do think that is something a lot of us in the modern world, a lot of our light, especially that which goes straight into our eyes, comes off screens. And so we have to be careful about that. What Apple did, or what now I guess most of the cell phone companies, tablet companies, and laptop companies are doing, is they've just turned down the most bluish of the LEDs, and it diminishes intensity as well as making it a warmer color time. I think it's a good idea to use it. I personally use it myself, and I would encourage anybody who, especially somebody who's a late night screen user, if you're still sending emails at 10, probably better to have it on night shift. If you're still using your phone at that hour, it's certainly a good idea to have it on night shift. If you want to gracefully enter sleep in the evening, you might even want to turn it on earlier, such that you kind of set yourself up to be in the right state of sleepiness at the right time. The truth of the matter, though, is that it's not quite perfect. It's got a little structure to it. There's definitely some signaling there that could be improved, and so our system sets out to make we can even measure it relative to sunlight, and we find that it's within kind of single digit percentage differences from sunlight, and that's not entirely true of what's done with screens because of requirements of how they're manufactured and how they're set up. So yeah, but I do think it's a great idea. I don't see anybody having a downside to using night shift because we all use these devices rather frequently. And you're correct. The TVs probably ought to have something similar on them, but I'm not personally aware of anybody who's gotten a TV that has that function in it. That maybe it's coming out, but we haven't seen it on the market yet.
Great. Well, very informative. If people want to dig into this further, can you tell them how to learn more about your company and the products it offers?
Yes, certainly. So we are LEDdynamics. That's the holding company that has multiple ways of going to market. We have a fixture brand called ProLume, which is where we build PERFEKTlight. And this is all available on our website, which is ProLumeLED.com. And we can also take, there's a phone number there. You could call us up and discuss it with one of our experts and learn more about what you might need to do. We're very much looking to expand especially the commercial installations of PERFEKTlight. It's gone into some museum applications. It's been in retail, and it's doing good work there. But I think for the immediate future, it's probably the hospitals, the elder care facilities, places where people genuinely have a real hard time with sleep that the interest will probably come, and also the needs that we can satisfy immediately are there too. We're working on things for the residential, and we'll continue to push in that direction as well. So.
Great.
Excellent, Neil.
It's been a delight visiting with you, and thank you for getting technology to fix technology.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And Neil, pass along our thanks to one of your employee colleagues there, Patrick Schlott, who's been trying to help us out on a different front today.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, Patrick is a wonderful engineer and really contributes mightily around our facility every day. So I'll let him know that you gentlemen appreciate his contributions as well. So.
All right. Really appreciate you. Now I know how to get rid of brain fog. All right. We'll talk to you soon, Neil. Thanks a lot.
Sleep a bit better. Cheerio. Okay. Have a nice evening, gentlemen.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye. So, Henry, I haven't been as attentive, not so much in my brain fog, but monitoring some things that tech are doing. So we are going to get a few announcements out, but we're going to put some music on at 2 minutes to 12 and do a reboot of our modem. So those who are streaming, don't panic. We may be off the stream for those 2 minutes while we try to get our automation back up and running. Hey, Henry, it is. I know you've got probably a couple of items. I want to at least get these two out. We might have to wait on the electric bus story. Of course, we've got the election, and a lot of you might go to the Vermont League of Conservation Voters to see what the scorecards are if the environment's really important. I'm looking at a mailing that a lot of people have received, and we'll just keep the names out of this, but I'm not so sure that the candidate who's mailing this out is really much of a pro-environment, and this is for the state Senate here in Vermont. In a tag list of things that he is interested in, do you want to be told how you must heat your home by bureaucrats in the Vermont legislature? Number 2, do you want an increase on the tax you pay for oil and propane? And then the third environmental related statement is, do you want to be told you must drive an electric vehicle? So that's what a lot of people are receiving in the mail, Henry. So just sending that out. We're not endorsing one side or another, but just be careful what you read and how you vote on Tuesday if you haven't voted already.
And I think that that the state and electric companies and so forth are very, very careful not to tell you what you must do.
No, there's still plenty of options out there.
They try to make it the options available.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'm seeing a 1984 government taking over Vermont at the moment. Bipartisanship. We have a Republican governor who's been doing a pretty capable job, and we'll see how the next legislature goes. Hey, there's a great film coming up tonight, Henry, if I can bring it up. It's called Tar. It's going to be at the Bale Space. It's about one of those Superfund sites out in Oklahoma, one of the biggest in the country. It's called Tar, and there will be a Native American speaker introducing that film. All this happening here at the Bale on the Commons at 6:30 tonight, Thursday night. And I'll throw it back to you, Henry, and then we'll do our underwriting credit and go to music.
Yes, indeed. So next week on Green Zine, we will have the state extension forester, Allie, spacing her last name, who helped write the summary of all the state's carbon sequestrations and the state's carbon emissions, and looking at the balance. And we will get into the role that forests play in that on next week's Green Zine.
All right. Thank you very much, Henry. Look forward to it. So good to have you back in the studio. And thanks for listening out there, listeners. You are tuned to WFVR LP South Royalton. Goodbye, Henry.
Bye-bye.